Hey everyone, this is Elijah from Cryptid Studies Institute. In a matter of weeks it will be Halloween again, and with the return of Halloween, Michael Myers of the classic Halloween movie series comes back into the limelight. And for those who are unaware of Michael Myers and his background, the entirety of his life was steeped in mystery. Strange and unsettling was the story of Michael. To make a long story somewhat brief, Michael, as a child, was beautiful and wholly innocent. But unexpectedly, on Halloween night, this perfect child kills his sister for no apparent reason, almost as if some unseen switch was flipped on. Michael is placed into an institution, and he sits by a window, never uttering a word to anyone, and here he sits for years and years, waiting in almost a state of standby. Out of the blue, on Halloween night, Michael escapes to wreak havoc on the small community nearby, and to take the life of Jamie Lee Curtis in the movie. Michael, for all intents and purposes, was somehow supernaturally operated. The character managed things that he should have never been physically capable of accomplishing, especially since he had no true education and harnessed the intelligence of a child. A dark and malevolent spirit hijacked Michael and propelled him in his dark mission. Michael Myers was introduced to cinema in 1978 and has been a staple of the horror genre, terrifying thousands of individuals ever since. But what if I told you that it is entirely within the realm of possibility that Michael was based on truth and modeled after a strange and enigmatic person from history, a man who went by the title of Stanley Stiers? Being fans of the strange and unusual, our ears here at Cryptid Studies Institute collectively perked up when we learned the story behind this peculiar person, this real Michael Myers. And as the story is told, Stanley was born in Iowa in the year 1912, and as chance would have it, two families were giving birth at the hospital. However, what should normally be a blessing and a time of rejoicing quickly turned sour, because fate had its hand resting on these two families. Events were about to unfold that would forever alter the lives of these happy people. The nurse who had been operating during these hours was about to change the course of Stanley's life, because for some unknown reason, she felt it would be a good idea to swap the two children, sending them to separate families. The parents were ecstatic and filled with a joy that surely the angels themselves would envy. That is, until they found out that this child didn't belong to them, because unfortunately for these parents, their child died in a car accident on the way home, along with Stanley's true family. This event was strange in itself, and seemed almost prearranged by some unseen hand. And as it turns out, the nurse did in fact suffer jail time for this terrible crime against these happy couples, but that could never heal their broken hearts and bring back the child that would forever be lost. Bitterness and hatred flooded the hearts of the once joyful people, and now they directed their hate onto Stanley, who himself was also a victim. He was abused by his new family, locked in his room, and they tended to stay in a drunken state, making things far more difficult to bear. However, as fate would have it, they soon gave birth to another child, a little girl who they called Susie, and Susie, learning from the bad influences of the parents, soon also was abusing and tormenting Stanley, yelling at him and even physically attacking him. Days became weeks, and weeks became months, and the months drifted into years, until it had reached the Halloween of 1923. Stanley had developed a deep fascination for trick-or-treating and all the childish entertainment that goes along with it. It was a night of ghosts and goblins, and heavily sugared snack treats. Stanley could almost taste the sweets that were soon to be all his. However, his stepfamily had other plans for him, as they forbade Stanley of the Halloween delights that he so craved. Cruelly, though, and unfairly, his little sister, who was so highly favored of the step-parents, will be taking part in a Halloween party somewhere in town. Rage, pain, and confusion racked the heart and mind of the young child, until he could no longer endure the cruel mercies of his parents. This act would be the final humiliation that he would endure. Because in the hours that followed, a dark force seemed to enter Stanley. Something evil joined itself unto this boy, and would forever cause him to be seen as an image of terror and mystery. Stanley would no longer endure the degradation he was given, because as the story goes, he took a butcher knife and began to brutally murder the step-parents that so terribly treated him. And when Susie got home, she was met with the same dark fate that his family just did. He even went so far as to kill the family dog. And following this grisly revenge, Stanley went trick-or-treating for the first time in his life. However, his anger had not been fully satisfied yet, so he began to find and invade the homes of his school bullies, some of them being a lot older and a lot bigger than he was. He killed his bullies, and the families of his bullies. According to some supposed survivors, they say that Stanley had almost supernatural strength as he threw grown men across the room, throwing them around like rag dolls, then finishing them off completely. Sometime on the following morning, Stanley was caught by federal agents on a school swing set consuming some of the sugary sweets that he collected on the night before. He was then whisked away, probably quietly and without knowledge of the media, lest they report on this story of why a child would snap and go on a killing spree across town. But the true mystery was that there was no way to explain the inhuman strength and the terrible bloodlust that he demonstrated. Over the next 13 years, Stanley remained the study of doctors and researchers who found nothing that pointed to demonic possession or anything of a supernatural nature regarding the boy, which only added to the mystery. Years flew by, and it was now the Halloween of 1936. Stanley had grown to be 24, and now stood at a frightening height of 6'4", and weighed roughly 260 pounds, and it just so happened that on this Halloween night, a couple of the employees at this institution began to harass and hurl foul utterances at this monster of a man. The employees continued on, mocking and verbally attacking Stanley, until the same fire that ignited suddenly and without warning 13 years ago sparked and roared once more to life. He attacked, and in moments, both of them were lying dead on the floor with broken necks. Fueled by an unnatural force, Stanley made his escape. He was breaking loose from the prison that had been holding him. Time was of the essence, and it was now or never. He burst out of the exit doors and found that the feds had been alerted of his escape, and they was there waiting for him. Shots began to fire one after another, striking this hulk of a human multiple times, but no human hand could stop his almost demonic attack, and according to some versions of the story, he possessed such a superhuman strength that he picked up a car and threw it at his attackers and killed all of them. However, I find this detail a little hard to swallow. Other reports simply state that he was almost impossible to stop in the way that he didn't feel any pain from the gunshots. He was so intimidating that the feds themselves were terrified of him and would slowly back away, because they were sure that if he got close enough so that he could get his hands on them, they would be dead. Stanley escaped that fateful night and was never recaptured. But supposedly, according to the story, murders caused by his hand are still reported across the country from time to time. Murders with his name attached have been reported on Halloween in Mexico City in 2013 and in Palo Alto, California in 2017. It has even been mentioned that the same nurse who originally caused him to be switched at birth also suffered a brutal death at his hands. Stanley was born in the year 1912, and this would place him at the astonishing age of 106 years old. Now the big question that remains is, could the story of this Michael Myers-type fiend actually be true? Unfortunately, we are left to wonder, because there is no way of knowing whether he existed or not, because we have no legitimate or legal documents showing that he ever lived. It appears that if he did exist, then any and all legal record of him has been scrubbed away, and to reference George Orwell's classic 1984, he's been thrown down the memory hole, to where no trace of him exists anymore. Maybe he is real, and maybe, just maybe, he's still out there watching, waiting in the shadows like a phantom from yesteryear, waiting for Halloween to come back around so his unspeakable rage can break loose once again. Either way, the story of Stanley Stiers will forever go down in history as one of the most interesting and unexplained stories to fall on human ears. Until next time, I'm Elijah Henderson.